Make money from real estate.
Amen.
Make money from real estate. Now, and I thought this was very interesting. Nehemiah chapter 5, it says, others said, we're having to mortgage our fields and vineyards and homes to get enough grain to keep from starving. And I thought about that. It's like here they have homes, they have property, but it's not making them any money. And sometimes, they tell you to get a house and get a house and all this good stuff, and that's great. But how can you use your house to make money for you? Or how can you buy some real estate to make money for you? It teaches us to make money from real estate. And that's what we have to be willing to sit there and say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make money from, and really if you pay attention, I'm trying to teach you how to have multiple streams of income as well, which is here biblically. But it says, we're having to mortgage our fields and vineyards. That means they have to put it up for sale. They have to borrow against their mortgages just to get enough grain to keep from starving. Let's go to the next one. Next slide. Woo! This is on my wall, and I just saw this recently, and which came in at the right time. We need to buy assets that will buy more assets that will pay for our liabilities. We need to buy assets that will buy more assets that will pay for our liabilities. And what does that mean? What am I saying by that? You buy a house, but then you buy another. You use the money from the house that you bought to buy you another house, and then you use that money from the next house to buy another house. That way, that third house is paying for all your liabilities and the stuff that you got going on. But what we do is we buy a house and use that one house to pay for our liabilities. When you really should be buying more assets. That's how the rich, as they say, the rich get richer. And I'm reading, a good book that that I really encourage everybody to read is The Millionaire. If you haven't read it, The Millionaire Next Door. It's an excellent book, The Millionaire Next Door. And it talks about how, we see millionaires driving these lavish cars and stuff like that, but your average millionaire does not live like a millionaire. Another funny story that came out, it's always interesting when we get ready to do these financial classes, how stories come out about basketball players or sports players, and then I'm going to give you my final point. They talked about Kawhi Leonard. You saw that story? How here this guy making millions of dollars. Kawhi Leonard, if you don't know him, go look him up. But it talks about how he making millions of dollars, but he coupons like nobody else. And then it talks about how his car is a 1998, it's some type of truck or SUV. Old Tahoe. He drives an old Tahoe and has and he coupons and making millions of dollars. And that really as we look at that, and again, it's one thing to have assets to pay for the cars and stuff that you want, but you got to think differently about money. Because when you think differently about it, you're sitting there saying, okay, you know what? What I'm going to do is, instead of write off getting this and getting that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit there and allow my assets or my business, what we're talking about, pay for the car that I want and stuff like that. But we got to think differently. Buy assets that will buy more assets that will pay for our liabilities. Make money from real estate. Last point. Point number 4 is make money from residual income. Make money from residual income. And others said we're having to borrow money to pay the royal tax on our fields and vineyards. To make money, we're having to borrow money. Now watch this. They're having to borrow money to pay their taxes. Isn't that crazy? What if you had to borrow money just to pay your taxes? And that really made me think about, because one of the things and that's why I say I love this book, Millionaire Next Door, is it talks about how the rich avoid paying taxes. Mm-hmm. Because they know the loopholes, and one of the things that they talk about, and that's why we really suggest, and that's why this is a perfect timing, it talks about, having your own business on the side. so that way you're not, paying a lot in taxes and stuff like that. We think about it, but we really don't leverage the information that we get. Let's go to the next slide. This is the last slide, and that's a lot, but I thought this was very good. People accumulate significant wealth by minimizing their realized/taxable income and maximizing their unrealized/non-taxable income. In essence, it says what I just said. You accumulate significant wealth by paying less in taxes. We want, we want that job that pays 6 figures, or we want that job to pay 50,000. We want that job to pay 100,000. But what you don't realize is the more money you make, the more taxes you get as you work for somebody. That puts you in a different tax bracket. And what you have to figure out is, hey, listen, okay, yeah, I want this job, but you know what? I don't want it all in cash. I want you to put it in stocks. You know what I'm saying? Don't give me that. I want what the boss has. I want, you know what I'm saying? When you start thinking like that, you're sitting there saying, I'm thinking more about my future than I am thinking about that job. Because we're just thinking about the money. But God is thinking about legacy and what you're leaving in wealth. Wealth is being able to, wealth is being able to take time off your job and not stress about it. See, that's what God is trying to take us to. I'm going to close with this. A good man leaves an inheritance, Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Now, some of us, Proverbs 13:22. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. Now, watch this. Some of us can leave some money for our kids. But it's a whole nother thing to leave money for your kids' kids. See, that's a whole nother level of thinking. That's a whole nother level of sitting there saying, okay, you know what? I ain't just thinking about myself, but I'm thinking about what my kid will have. And then what my kids' kids will have. That's a whole nother level. And I think we talked about that, at last month about, changing that mindset. It's not enough just to sit there and say, okay, I need this and I need that. And yeah, you need to, take care of your needs. But when you think big picture, long range, you'll not only take care of yourself, but you'll also take care of your kids and then your kids' kids. What if I think one of the guys talked about, what was the tall guy that was here last month? Ephraim. That good story that he told about the grandfather that gave $30,000 to the kids. His grandfather came in and gave $30,000 to his grandkids because he'd been saving money. He said, listen, this is my investment to you. Not one, but two. I'm going to give you $30,000 each just to get you off on the right foot. What if you had what if you had somebody just give you $10,000 when you graduate? Here's $10,000 to get you straight.
That made it interesting.
They money. Yeah. And how we, can
going to spend.
Instead of going to spend. And we got to think about that. How can
that's because of how they were taught. Most people, if you get $30,000, you're going to say, okay, let me go buy a car, let me go buy these Jordans, let me go buy a Louis, let me go buy a Gucci, let me go buy all the weed, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
But because like when I was growing up, I grew up with a single mom, and she was older, but she didn't tell me like, okay, Tasha, budget.
Right.
Tasha, okay, when we opened up a checking account, she would just put money in it, but then I had to learn the hard way when I went off to college. When I went off to college, you didn't have to apply for credit cards. They literally just sent them to you. No, they didn't make me use them, but they did send them to me. Yeah. But I think if my mother would have had the knowledge from her mom and her father to say, okay, Natasha, you need to save. I knew about tithing, but she didn't say how to save. And I think it would have been different going through college. I wouldn't, even though I was an A student, I was like, okay, I can get free money, tuition paid, but I can get student loans and then shop with this money. What? Yeah. And so, but if I know what I know now, I could have just easily lived off the scholarship money and not taken one student loan. But because I was being greedy, I was like, oh, I can get student loans. Everybody else getting a check. I'm gonna get a check.
Right.
But now I'm paying that back.
No, we all are.
Yeah.
And to your point, you say something? Oh. And to that point, it's all about teaching. Teaching. Unfortunately, as African Americans, as all of us is just here, you know, we're probably behind, you know, probably what, 10 years behind the 8 ball, probably even more, you know, at least as relates to financial knowledge, because, you know, yeah, some of us, we're in our 40s and so forth and so on, but we're still trying to catch up to stuff that white kids knew, like, you know, like you were saying, when they were 18 or 20. You know, we're behind the 8 ball. We could have been here a whole another 30 minutes talking about tithing, but I didn't want to really dive deep too much into that. But it's a good principle to have. You know, the Bible says, give and it shall be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together. Malachi chapter 3, verse 10 talks about, will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me in tithes and offering. And I hadn't really talked about that, but we got to understand and trust in that tithing principle. You know, so many times people don't trust it. They'll try it, but they don't trust it. They just do it. But that's a whole nother teaching that we'll try to get split into one of our next financial segments. So, cool. All right. Thank y'all. We'll do a short break so we can